You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Los Angeles Bolt fam, what is up? Welcome to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network, our city, our network, your destination for Los Angeles football. Today, talking all things Chargers as they go on the road to Atlanta and they seize a victory. It was an interesting end, but hey, they got the win. They moved to 5-3. We're going to get all into it here on the LA Football Show. Make sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. We are everywhere you listen, also on YouTube. You can do our main channel, LAFB Network, or we have an LAFB Chargers channel, which is specifically just Chargers. And of course, the website, LAFBnetwork.com. Joining me as always, my better half, my co-host, the Madman Jamal Madney. What is up, my man? How are you doing? You staying dry on this rainy day?
Staying dry, Ryan. You know, the city of LA shuts down with 3 drops of rain. It's hilarious. People don't go into work. People cancel lunch plans. It's remarkable how the city stops with just a few drops of rain. And that's where we are in this predicament today. It is, you know, they say first world problems, and then there's one level above that, which is LA weather problems.
Yeah, I know. I actually came into the office, but my wife's boss texted her at 7:30 in the morning, like, you can work from home today. Don't worry about driving in because of the weather. So I will say, at least where I am, it is definitely more than 3 drops. It's actually coming down pretty good all day, or at least like right before I started recording, it was like dumping. It looked like tornado, like winds howling. It's dark. You can see the smokestacks and the rain just pouring. So, and the way our irrigation in LA was created, like the streets just flood very quickly. One story before we get into it. Do you remember, Jamal, back in, I think this was 2010, when we had crazy rain where so many cities like legit flooded? I don't know if you remember that. We were I was up in Big Bear, actually, snowboarding. They closed the mountain at like noon because it was whiteout conditions. So we had to come back down. We get back down to Long Beach where I was going to school, and people were literally kayaking and canoeing in the streets because there was 4 feet of water. Our apartment, we had our downstairs patio, and there was literally 3 to 4 feet of water just pressed up against our glass window, like shockingly did not break it and flood our entire apartment. But that was I'd only lived in LA for a year and a half at that point. So that was crazy to me, literally seeing people like canoeing down the streets of Long Beach. It was pretty crazy.
That's amazing. I don't know if I remember that, or I was just in a different part of the city, but essentially you've described every monsoon season in India times 2, where you've got people in the streets of Bombay swimming in the months of really June and July is monsoon season there. I was in India 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, and had to come home from a party, and the car was just 4/5 level of water. And I was like, oh my God, this is an incredible adventure. Not realizing, hey, maybe it's not the safest thing in the world, but I had a ball doing it.
Yeah. Another instance of this happened. This I think may have been 2008, my freshman year. I was driving down Sunset Beach, which is a beach in between Long Beach and Huntington Beach, like a little small community there. If you've never been, you got to check out Sunset Beach. It's more of a locals feel, not too touristy. But a lot of the roads when you're going down PCH right there will like kind of valley out. And so you got to go down and then come back up. Not like super crazy, but, you know, drop down 5 feet over a course of time and go back up. So all the water would just settle there and it would be very deep. And I remember driving down, not speeding or anything, but just driving normal. And I hit that where the water had set and the water went over the top of my car. That's how deep it was. And I get out of it and then my car stalls because I literally just like flooded the engine, like legitimately flooded the engine. So that was another way. I was like, oh, this is different. Colorado, we get blizzards and snowstorms, but here we flood the streets. It's wild.
That's amazing. Oh yeah, for sure. It's hard to believe considering the weather in Los Angeles. There is more often than not some interesting rain stories, and thank God we've got the rain finally. Yeah. 2 weeks now, you know, second week of November, finally it's upon us. That combined with daylight savings, I think we're officially in quote unquote winter in LA.
Hey, I mean, 52 degrees up here, rainy. That's cold for LA, like sweater weather, baby. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So that's free money. You can bet on the NFL, bet on college, bet on basketball, hockey, anything. Elections are today at the time of this recording, Tuesday, November 8th. I actually, after this, have to go vote because I've been so busy, haven't been able to, but we'll definitely get my vote in before polls close around 8 o'clock. So if those listening, if I get this up before then, make sure you vote before 8 o'clock. If not, hopefully you did. But you can bet, when I was getting to that whole monologue, is you can bet on the polls and on the elections at BetOnline if you want to. So betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE, 50% welcome bonus. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. All right, well, the subject matter for this show, Jamal, is our Los Angeles Chargers moved to 5-3 after a dramatic 20-17 win over the Atlanta Falcons. We were pretty spot on with our predictions ahead of time. You had 2016, I believe. I had 2017. One of us, I can't remember who, had said that the Chargers will fall up to a early deficit. And yet again, they did, falling behind 10-0 and then come storming back. So a lot of what we expected kind of came to fruition. And Justin Herbert, like we expected, looked a lot more like Justin Herbert. I thought overall the coaching was much better. Still some things here and there. Obviously, you never like to see a team fall down 10-0 after a bye week, but they overcame it. They had some good offensive play calling. They tightened up on defense overall after the first two drives. Your initial takeaways from this win for the Chargers?
Yeah, Ryan. My first takeaway is, Nostradamus over here strikes again with the bullseye, bingo, 20-17 spot on. So well done there, Ryan. The couple takeaways for me. First is, even if it statistically didn't look like it in terms of one of his elite games, I think this is the first game where we start feeling like Justin Herbert is getting closer to 100%, if not almost all the way there. Obviously, he was 30 for 43 for about 245 yards and one touchdown and the one interception. But I think just, Ryan, the types of throws and the lack of the types of mistakes that we've seen the last couple of weeks really was the big difference for me. In particular, in that fourth quarter, back-to-back field goal drives. Chargers were still behind in the fourth quarter, spotting those 10 points and kind of having to climb their way back. I thought Joshua Palmer was outstanding in this game. And the fact that Herbert was able to spread the ball, 5 different guys with at least 5 catches. So I think the variety and Justin Herbert's health really stand out to me. And it's hard to win in this league. It's hard to win in this league against a 500 opponent. It's hard to win in this league on the road. And it's hard to win in this league without your 2 best receivers. And the Chargers were able to do all of those things. This is their first, I believe, victory over a 500 team this season to get them to 5-3. And if the playoffs started today, they'd be in that 7-hole, getting ready to battle it out with Kansas City in the first round. So they're in if it starts today, which is really encouraging. Long way to go, obviously. And then the last thing was, it was a struggle for Austin Ekeler to really get going. 14 carries, 47 yards in the touchdown. But I was impressed. You've been harping on it for weeks across both our pro teams, both our college teams, staying committed to the run game. And I thought Staley did an outstanding job, and Joe Lombardi, of staying committed to that run game long enough to control tempo, keep some, scoreboard pressure on the Atlanta Falcons to ultimately let Herbert do his thing as we expected in the fourth quarter. So job well done all around in a gutsy victory to get this team to 5-3.
Yeah, absolutely. And with, it seems like every Chargers game is a tale of a different storyline per quarter almost, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You want to see teams make adjustments, and we'll obviously do our Rams segment soon, but the Rams seem the opposite. Like, we kind of see what we're going to get in the first few drives, and that's the story of the game, the entire 4 quarters. Whereas these Chargers are very different and methodical, and sometimes for better or for worse. The one thing I do want to touch on, because we talked about a lot last week about this receiving core and how the injuries have struck, and how we looked at the overall roster construction and commended it, because when you look at when healthy, this is a very good receiving core. Obviously, they're not healthy. And I'm not sitting here saying this team right now is a Super Bowl contender. Obviously, they're 5-3, which I think is astounding. I think we have to commend them, though, to be 5-3 with the injuries they have. I don't know how many teams, I'm not even going to just throw out quarterback names, just teams in general can be a 5-3 record with the injuries that the Chargers have sustained. And it seems like the hot trending topic right now, for some reason, at least on Twitter, is this entire coaching staff needing to be fired. And because of the preseason expectations, which I get were lofty, which I get were high because of what this team built. But those expectations need to come back down to earth when you see the kinds of injuries that this team has dealt with. Now, I'm not by any means saying Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi have been, perfect top 2 coaches in the NFL this year. They've certainly had their mistakes and certainly done some things that I've scratched my head about. And I would have liked to have seen more improvement from year 1 to year 2. But overall, I mean, you see down the board, the star talent not on the field. And this team is not only 5-3, but is 1 win behind the best record in the AFC in general. I mean, I know they're 7th ranked right now, but if they next week, depending how it swings, they could jump from 7-2 just like that. So I think when you look at that, you really have to be happy if you're a Chargers fans. And a lot of people just seemingly aren't, for whatever reason, maybe because of those preseason expectations. They were thinking they should have beat the Falcons 40-7 instead of 20-17 on a last second field goal. But not many quarterbacks in this league are winning a game throwing the ball to second-year Joshua Palmer as your wide receiver 1, walk-on practice squad receiver DeAndre Carter. Like that, it's not the recipe for success in the NFL. You need those top-tier talents, especially on the outside. And so I think it's been very impressive that the Chargers, like you mentioned, have stuck to the run to alleviate some of the pressure from Herbert. But those guys are stepping up, making plays when they have to. And then Herbert getting back to himself. And I think the last thing I'll say, Jamal, I think what I liked seeing from Herbert in this game was that first quarter was the Herbert we've been seeing the last 3 weeks. Checking things down, looking tentative, not looking fully comfortable. I know a lot of people will blame play calling, but I think a lot of that was just Herbert not forcing the issue. And then it's almost like he flipped that switch that we've been wanting to see for a while and got that extra incentive, that extra motivation, that extra kill drive, if you will, to start pushing the ball down the field. And maybe the play calling reflected that, or maybe that was just Herbert saying like, all right, the plays are there. I just need to make some stuff happen. I think of that one pass he had over the middle. It was a quick 7-yard slant, but like a tiny window between 2 players that he hit DeAndre Carter for a key 3rd down conversion. And those are the throws we got used to seeing that we haven't seen over the last 3 weeks. So this is one of those get right games against a tough opponent, but they got the win and we're starting to see more of what they can do. And then the sky's the limit when they do get some of these talented players back.
Yeah, Ryan, I think it's spot on. And I think it's just such a unique time here in the National Football League where it's just ultimate parity right now, where you can see a 6-2 team be first place in the AFC, and the Chargers, for all of their injuries, are 1 game out of home field advantage and the number 1 seed. And so I think it's really important to take that bigger picture in mind. I don't want to paint too rosy a picture either, because I think the Chargers have also been aided by an extremely soft schedule. And I think that's enabled them to stay 5-3 and stay relevant. But to be able to do the things that they have done with the injuries that they have had in terms of key pieces, your top 2 receivers, your top offensive lineman, your top cover corner, your top pass rusher. I mean, it's staggering how they've been able to keep it together. And Herbert, I think I'm just really encouraged to see that he finally cut it loose, that it was either mental or physical, where he's physically confident enough in those ribs for a long enough period of time where he could cut it loose, or he just sort of mentally got out of the funk of saying, hey, I got to win or lose. I got to empty the holster. The last few weeks, he's left bullets in the belt. It's really felt like before the Chargers have either won or lost games. And this time he really sort of maximized his ability. And I think it's interesting, Ryan. I don't think it's coincidental that the Chargers' two best performances are on the road.
Mhm.
When you talk about the Falcons win and the near win against Kansas City, there is something about this team and about Herbert in particular that I've noticed a little bit over the last year and a half, where they're almost more relaxed on the road. I don't know if it is a sense, especially this year, where that feeling of expectation is more palpable at home, because this is the first time that they are thought of in this upper echelon as favorites, as title contenders. And they maybe struggle with that in that atmosphere where they can kind of go on the road and it's them against the team and the entire crowd. And it just sort of relaxes them into saying, hey, we're just a team. This is just a game. This is who we are. But it's really interesting that I find time over time, their best performances in the last year and a half have really come on the road, and some of their worst performances have come at home. And so I wonder a little bit about their psyche of still the growing pains and the process of going from hunter to hunted. And it's a fun process to watch unfold, this young team trying to see if they can climb this upper echelon of the AFC and of the NFL as they sort of move towards having consistent title aspirations year over year.
Yeah, so maybe a 7 seed is better for the Chargers than a 1 or a 2 seed. They could just play on the road all through the playoffs and play that hunter mentality, or the underdog mentality. But yeah, it is a great observation, and one that's obviously come to fruition this year. Outside of that Kansas City close loss, the other two have been at home, and they've been blowouts at home basically, and their other 4 wins have come on the road essentially. So they've it's an interesting thought. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up the show is the defense and the running game. Real quick though, mention our friends at Liquid Death. Got the can right here. I haven't had this one in a while, Jamal. The severed lime, naturally flavored sparkling water. You can find them in the water section at any convenience or grocery outlet: Vons, Albertsons, Safeway, Ralph's, Whole Foods, 7-Eleven. They look like tall cans of beer or energy drinks, but they are none of the above. They are actually just mountain spring water. And as I'm reading this ad, we're getting a national flood warning that's going through and buzzing my phone and watch, but not to be disturbed, because if you don't want the rainwater, you want the natural water, make sure to pick up some Liquid Death today. You can also use the locator to find the nearest store to where your location is. Go to liquiddeath.com/LAFB. Once again, that's liquiddeath.com/LAFB. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So, Jamal, wrapping up, if you have any other points, though, feel free to ask.
It's so ironic, though, Ryan, about your ad read right now about Liquid Death. It feels like the city of LA today, from a traffic standpoint, is going to be suffering from Liquid Death with all the rain. So I thought your product placement was impeccable today.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, thought had to get that in there. So, and certainly it is. And yeah, it's a great analogy. I don't even have a counter for that. So, but the run defense, Jamal, I know a lot of people were not necessarily pleased with it, especially when you look at statistically. Tyler Algier with 10 carries, 99 yards, 9.9 average. Cordell Patterson in his first game back, 13 for 44. He had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Caleb Huntley, 7 for 34, and Mariota, 5 for 24. So overall, nearly a 200-yard performance on the ground. However, passing only 129 yards. So we knew going into this game, Jamal, that this was going to be a very run-heavy focus for Atlanta. That is their bread and butter. That is how they win football games, is on the ground. And so I don't think the expectation was realistic for those out there that thought, oh, they hold this team to under 100 yards. That's just when you are running the ball literally, 34 times, I think, you're going to get some production. Now, the first 2 drives was, I know some people say unacceptable. I could throw that word around, but the first 2 drives was very poor. But I thought they overall tightened things up after those first 2 and kept everything more succinct and less explosive, which is what we saw in that first one when they they got some big runs early on. So what was your overall thoughts on the run defense and how it improved throughout the game?
Yeah, Ryan, I think that the key for me was to see that evolution after the first 2 drives. Look, after the first 2 drives, they only gave up 7 points the whole game. And so you have to be very encouraged by that. I think it's a challenge to play a team like the Falcons in the NFL because they run such a, pun intended, I guess, but they execute such a college style offense in terms of the emphasis on the run game, and all of their formations are max protect, max blockers. That's a hard offense to prepare for in the NFL week over week when just about everybody else is applying some type of scheme around West Coast offense, spread hybrid, different things in terms of getting the ball in the air and having some balance. So it does take a little bit of an adjustment. It's hard. I think the Chargers were aided by a bye week, but it's hard to sort of adjust and play that way, Ryan, when you're not used to it week over week. And I think the similar analogy there is when you play the Baltimore Ravens. And that's why the Ravens are so good in terms of their identity of trying to get a lead early and then play off of that in terms of chewing the clock. And I think the Falcons want to do something very similar eventually. So to me, obviously, it wasn't the prettiest of run defenses, but the lack of reps and preparation you get with a team like that, and then B, when you're always in these run heavy formations, it becomes challenging to see that the first couple times. They adjusted, and I thought they adjusted exceptionally well. So I'm less concerned about it than, say, what I saw in the Cleveland game or what I saw in the Houston game, where they just got sort of popped for these big runs and hat on hat and missed tackles. This was sort of the byproduct of some intentional schematics that once they saw it a couple times on the field, you could tell it was harder for the Falcons to do what they needed to do. And also the fact that the Falcons have so many running weapons. They're constantly fresh in the backfield. And Mariota being a primary runner, you almost have an additional runner in the backfield every time. So putting a hat on hat is challenging with this offense, and I think the Chargers did a decent enough job. I'm not too concerned about it moving forward.
I agree. And the last thing I'll add to that is we talked about it in the previous show, like the worst case scenario happened for this matchup in the sense that Atlanta jumped out to a 10-0 lead. Because when you have the lead, then that just allows you to run the ball even more because you are not playing from behind. The best case scenario was the Chargers getting out and forcing Atlanta to throw the ball, which is not what they're good at. So the fact that they allowed that to happen by playing very poorly on those first two drives, but then still were able to improve, facilitate, and crack down on what they knew was probably coming, which maybe that helped a little bit, but was it something that they couldn't stop previously? That to me is encouraging because that's what I've always said about Brandon Staley since his days in Chicago, Denver, and LA with the Rams was if you look at his first quarter defenses versus fourth quarter defenses, they are very different looking. And I think what really, truly matters in the NFL is your fourth quarter defense, which we can talk about the Rams here in another segment, which it kind of had the opposite effect. But overall, good win, 5-3. Big matchup again this weekend. Announced in week 11 that the KC game is flexed to Sunday night. So looking like America wants to see the Chargers on prime time again, even though they haven't been quite as exciting in weeks past, but I think we'll get there, especially with Keenan and Mike coming back. So good stuff. 5-3. I got nothing else to add unless you want to, anything you want to toss on there before we sign off on this one.
No, Ryan, I think all things considered, this is really a successful start to the season for the Chargers. Let's hope that they can build on it and really sort of reestablish maybe some of that preseason credibility as they get healthier. Because I'd love to just see this team for a few weeks completely healthy in 2022, because I think it's a dynamite roster with so much upside. And so just as an NFL fan and a fan of quality football, would love to see it this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last note on that, I think it was ESPN or PFF came out with a statistic this week. I can't even remember what it's called, like BUS or something, but had to do with just ranking injured teams. And the Chargers are dead last at 32 and are still 5-3. So I think that's very impressive. I think fans need to slow their roll with their hate for this coaching staff, because not many coaching staffs, I don't care if you're Bill Belichick, if you're Andy Reid, if you're John Harbaugh, whoever you are, if you're ranked dead last in the NFL with the amount of injuries and the top tier talent that is injured, and you're still a 5-3 winning record that's 7th in the AFC, you got to give your hats off to the coaching staff and obviously the players, Justin Herbert and Austin Ekeler and Isaiah Spiller, 7 carries, 4.1 yard average. Good to see that young man get some time with the rock. So overall, gutsy performance, great win. We didn't even really talk about the comeback, or not really comeback, but the last drive that was interesting. But all that matters is they got the dub and they move on to next week, and we can look forward to that preview later in the week. So for Jamal Madney, I'm Ryan Doward. Make sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, the website, lafnetwork.com. Join our text community. Text BOLTS, BOLTS, to 31032. Going to join our exclusive Chargers community where we do giveaways, exclusive content, events, all that fun stuff. We'd love to see you in there and chat with you. So BOLTS to 31032. Everyone enjoy the week. Stay safe out there. It is raining pretty heavily, and just want everyone to, not slide out on the road or anything. So be careful. We'll talk to you all later in the week.